Hello there, I'm the Common Sense Guy, and today we're going to be looking at how being a housewife is aiding in white supremacy. Don't take my word for it. Let's actually get into the story, which will be linked in the description box below.
I tear my heart open, I sew myself shut. My weakness is that I can't do much, and my scars remind me that the past is real. I tear my heart open just to feel.
So, to start off with, this is an opinion piece, and this is from the New York Times, but it is an opinion piece from the New York Times by Annie Kelly, and she is a PhD student researching the impact of digital cultures on anti-feminism and the far right. That's her whole title that they felt that they needed to do as a story, as an opinion piece. Yeah. The housewives of white supremacy. So let's move down. So Kelly starts as in a podcast interview posted last spring. Nicole Jorgensen, a singer and former schoolteacher in North Dakota, explains to her host that she has never been happier since marrying and having children. I wonder if that has something to do with that's what we're biologically designed to do when we're women. I wonder. Even to the point of men are normally happier when they have children and normally happier when they have a family. I wonder if that's genetically or biologically embedded into us. I wonder, Miss PhD student. And yet between cute pastoral antidotes, oh, it doesn't matter about her antidotes because she's going against you? That's nice to know in the future. Of growing her own vegetables and making banana bread, it soon becomes clear that Miss Jorgensen is advocating something sinister. No. No. All she's doing is saying that she's happier being a housewife compared to when she was working. It's not a hard comparison, but I suppose it's harder to do what you've done and take this completely out of fucking proportion and completely draw a straw man from it.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
She lived in Germany temporarily. She says, but left just before an influx of refugees took over the country. She just had a child and thinks the new baby is beautiful, but maybe not quite in the same way all mothers do. I always wanted children that looked like me, she says. Blonde haired, blue eyed babies. But I kind of had to say it underneath my breath. Yes, because, blonde hair, blue eyes, when you actually look like that, when the mother actually looks like that, you have, a little bit of a confirmation bias. It's the same thing for dads that normally want to have boys. It's a case that most mums always want to have daughters. Most fathers always want to have sons. Almost. Hashtag not all. But it's just a case of we always have a confirmation bias. Some of us have a perfect idea of what children we want. Some people want blonde hair and blue eyes. It does not mean that they are trying to build the fucking Nazis' superior fucking race. It just means that's what they want to do. Would you say that Sweden is the Nazi superior race then, considering most of them are blonde haired and blue eyes? No? Okay then, let's fucking move on. Because you're trying to infer that this person is a Nazi supremacist with this idea. But hey, let's dog whistle to the left a little bit more, shall we? By the time the interviewer begins to gush about how wonderful it is that Miss Jurgensen and her husband are both of Norwegian heritage, so I wonder why she wants blonde hair and blue-eyed children. I wonder. You guys come from the same blood. It's clear what political demographic both women are catering to. No, it's a case of some people are happy to be with other white people. Some people are very happy to be with other people in their actual nation. It is only people like the United States and people in the United States that are such a melting pot that it really doesn't matter because you don't have a generalized national identity. And by that, I don't mean that you don't have a national identity. You clearly do, and it's very powerful. But by that, I mean you don't have a particular face or a particular structure. It's a case of some people say, oh, yeah, it's white people that are supposed to do this. But you've got white people from Ireland, you've got people from England, you've got people from Norway, you've got people from Canada, you've got people from most of Europe, and all of the Europeans are going to be slightly diverse in their actual heritage, which all adds to different points. My point is that just because somebody says, oh, I want to marry a Norwegian and go out with a Norwegian, because they are Norwegian, doesn't mean that they're racist. It just means that that's their preference. But then again, that goes into a whole new bloody demographic of actual preferences, doesn't it? The fact that we're not allowed to have preferences and we have to marry everybody and go with everybody that is brown and of different colours, because if we don't, we're all racists and supremacists. Miss Jorgensen has been interviewed on Radio 314, a white supremacist talk programme. Is it? Is it, or is it just something that you're suggesting it is? It is interviewing her because she considered herself a tradwife. Tradwife, short for traditional wife, which is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But then it's the next bit that really gets to me on this. Used in alt-right circles to refer to women that embody traditional feminine and wifely qualities. You mean natural and the way that it's traditionally been. But apparently that's everything to do with alt-right circles and nothing to do with traditional circles. Interesting logic. Does that mean people like Islam are alt-right then? Or is it just Christianity and Judaic versions of this? See, when you're trying to push different dogma, you're always going to offend certain people. But yeah, it doesn't matter if you put alt-right on because it's another dog whistle by the left to be able to say that traditional wives are now considered to be absolutely alt-right and they are forms of Nazism. Yep, you heard that here first. That's what this person, that's a PhD student in feminism, is actually advocating and absolutely pushing for. Because apparently those wifely qualities are submissiveness, chastity, willingness to do household chores, etc. Because that definitely seems to be pushing a white supremacist agenda, doesn't it? At worst, you could say it's pushing a inferiority to men complex or inferiority to men ideology, possibly. You could push that, but to say that it's a form of alt-right supremacy, seems a little bit of a stretch there and almost trying to form a
Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
She wants children and is fine with me working so she doesn't have to. So it's possible she could make a good trad wife, traditional wife. Again, what is wrong with that? So the digital far right frequently called the alt-right by you guys and everybody's alt-right that disagrees with you, but yeah, whatever, is largely regarded as a men-only space. No, it's not. That's the reason why you have a couple of prominent right-wing women. I mean, if you're going to go by the UK standards, people like Lauren Southern are part of the alt-right. And if you are going to classify her as that to get her banned from a country, then it's a case of you probably need to stick to your principled arguments rather than your moralistically dog barking. The photographs from the white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, VA, were striking for the lack of female faces in a sea of button-down wearing styles. Wow, that's not putting your own political views into that, is it at all? The fact that some people actually have a completely and utter different political belief to you, which doesn't necessarily mean it's pushing the idea of Nazism. The movement shares DNA with so-called incels. No, it doesn't. That's just absolutely stupid. Incels are supposed to be involuntary, not being able to have sex and shit. In fact, Let me show you what incels means. So, first of all, we're going to go through the Urban Dictionary point, which I find quite interesting, which is the reason why I'm using it as a source to begin with. And obviously, you can do this. I'm not linking this in the description box. You can go into Urban Dictionary and type in any word you want to, and it will tell you what they think it means. So, top definition, because things get voted on. Incel, aka involuntary celibate. A person, usually male, because it's not specifically male, so they can't just put male, they have to put usually, because there are women involved in this as well, which is interesting, who has a horrible personality and treats women like sexual objects, and thinks his lack of a sex life comes from being ugly. Yes, that's exactly what they think. So they have a horrible personality, they treat people really bad, and yet, because they feel that they're ugly, that's the reason why people don't like them. Even though, as we all know, from life, movies, and in general, if you're good looking and still a dick, somehow you still manage to get a girl or two. Interesting how that falls apart when you just look at the culture involved, when it's really just his blatant sexism and terrible attitude. Because this wasn't written by a feminist at all. Incels have little to no self-awareness. Even when they see other ugly men with girlfriends, they consider those men to be tricksters who have somehow beat the system and can get women despite being cursed with unattractiveness. No. Actually, incels are quite close to the ideology of MGTOW, where they actually feel that women are doing it as a purpose because they can control the men. But, biasness doesn't really count in this, does it? In other words, they are respectful to women and women are attractive to their personalities. Again, please see previous comment. But incels can't comprehend such a phenomenon. No, it's the fact that they believe the phenomenon. Like transgender people believe that they can transition from being a male to a female. Like that. They believe that women owe them sex. And considering that it's actually not that part, it's actually a point of actually being able to have a romantic relations with other women. But hey, they're owed sex apparently in your idea. And many more extreme incels like to spend time in incel communities on the internet coming up with ways to make women have sex with them, often involving genocide of people of colour, genocide of Chads. Well, genocide of people of colour is not the same with genocide of Chads, but get your political points in there, don't you? Taking rights away from women, raping them, having sex with women's dead bodies, and other horrid, disgusting things. I would like to see your citations for that, rather than this a propaganda piece that you have decided that you're going to write. But then again, the whole idea that this is just a propaganda absolutely gets my goat on this. But hey, again, let's have sex with dead bodies, because apparently that's what incels do. They can't understand that is precisely why women want nothing to do with them. What, that they have sex with dead bodies? Because I don't think anybody would have sex with them. And I don't think you can say that incels are people that go around and invent the idea of raping culture or the rape culture. And I'm not too sure that you're trying to say, but are you trying to say that people like Sargon that are trying to put his versions of equality involved, are they incels? But hey, let's have a look at what their phrasing of it would be in a sentence. I'm pretty sure Ryan is an incel. Yesterday he made a Facebook post about how all women are shallow and exist to torture men by denying them sex, as if sex is something people deserve and not a privilege given by potential sexual partners that should be respected. So when you go on a slut walk, that's about sexual partners, is it? Or is it about your body and I can do what I want with my body? But you're actually describing MGTOW. Literally, you are describing how MGTOW would be and how they would feel that in your sentence. Incel would probably be, I'm pretty sure Ryan is incel. Yesterday he made a Facebook post about how nobody likes him, how he feels that he is completely and utterly ugly and ostracized by women in general. But hey, I'm just some guy on the internet. I'm sure I don't know anything about anything. On that note, let's go to Incel Wikipedia, or rather, Wikipedia for Incel. So, incels are part manitou of individual and celibacy, are members of an online subculture who define themselves as unable to find romantic and sexual partners despite desiring one. Wow, it's almost like it's a completely indifferent definition. It's almost like somebody wrote this with non-bias rather than somebody else writing it with a bias. Interesting, isn't it? A state they describe as inceldom. Self-identified incels are mostly white, male, and heterosexual. Discussions in incel forums are often categorized by resentment, misanthropy, self-pity, misogyny, and racism. Apparently. But hey, a sense of entitlement or a right to sex. I'm not sure that when you say romantic, that they're trying to say that they're enticed into sex, but okay, whatever. I mean, it's an idea of trying to actually understand the people rather than actually just destroying them. And the endorsement of violence against sexual active people. And yes, they do that. They've already had around about 4 murders, so to speak, so bomb threats and stuff like that. I'm not trying to say that the ideas that they have are completely and utterly sound. I'm not saying that. And some of the incels are absolutely schizo. But at the same time, you need to understand where they're coming from. If you don't understand where they're coming from, you can't actually help them. You're just going to push more people towards them. But then again, that's the reason why the alt-right is growing. Because more people that disagree with you are alt-right. So more people that disagree with your ideas are incels and MGTOW and, just horrible male supremacists. Oh, the Southern Poverty Law Center described the subculture as part of the online male supremacist ecosystem. And self-described incels have committed at least 4 mass murders in North America. And yes, they have. And I'm not going to refute that because they have. The thing that I would say is that they are male supremacists is absolutely ridiculous. Even if you were to go to the point of saying that they think that they deserve sex, it's not trying to say that they think that they are superior to women. It's trying to say that they think they deserve sex for whatever reason. And by the way, I don't agree with any of this. But let's go into history. We will only read the first paragraph. Everybody else can actually carry on and read it. It's not hard. You can see where my Wikipedia is and you can go through there. So history. The first incel community was started by a Canadian college student, known only by her first name, which is Alana. Interesting. In 1993 or 1997, when she created a website in order to discuss her sexual inactivity with others. The website titled Elena's Involuntary Celibacy Project, ooh, interesting, was used by people of all genders, interesting, to share their thoughts and experiences. In 1997, she started a mailing list on the topic that used the abbreviation INVCEL, or Invicel, which was later shortened to Incel. During her college career, and after she realised she was queer, so there's underlying issues with people that are actually considering themselves to be incels. That's an interesting point. I didn't make that all by myself and without any understanding of what's going on. And become more comfortable with her identity. She later gave it to a stranger. So the actual idea of incels actually come from a woman. And a queer woman. Interesting. Moving on. A network of men who feel women have unfairly denied them sexual relationships. And it is defined in part by its misogyny and its anti-feminist, anti-woman language. Again, you're putting a lot of people into that bracket just by generalizing it. In fact, you're putting me in that bracket, even though I have a missus. Amazingly so. If anybody's seen my mug, you would understand what I mean by that. She's a very good woman. But some members of the alt-right have been weighing whether the absence of women from their movement is a problem. 2016, the Swedish nationalist Marcus Fulin, who calls himself the Golden One on YouTube, made a video titled The Women Question. In it, he urged his followers to dial down the open misogyny and consider new strategies to win over more women to the white nationalist cause. Mr. Fulin was responding to statistics from the Australian presidential election that year, in which female voters helped swing the election away from the candidate of the far-right Freedom Party. You might not like that women have the right to vote. You may not like that anyone has the right to vote, Mr. Foley conceded, but it's about winning a long-term political victory. So all that vitriol that you've just wrote is completely destroyed by the fact that he has two quotes that you decided to enter into this point. You may not like that women have the right to vote, which doesn't mean that he doesn't like the fact that women like to vote or can vote. He's addressing his audience. He's actually trying to say that you should include women more. He's not necessarily saying that we need to have a political victory, but for our rough ideas or our core principles, which most people would agree on, where some people would disagree, like the idea of women being able to vote in general, would be the fact that he's not pushing an agenda on that point. It would be that he is trying to entice people to invite more women in. Don't you say at the top or in part of this actual point that if people actually want to have the idea of multiculturalism, it's the fact that they need to actually live with the people and realise that there's nothing to be scared of to take away their fear? But yet you seem to want to condemn people that are doing that. Carrying on the quote that absolutely destroys your little vitriol that you just put in, you might not like that anyone has the right to vote, meaning that some of the people that this Golden One has subscribed to him does not believe in the idea of democracy in itself, but yet you still have to use what systems are actually in place to be able to get your political views. Have a look at Belgium and have a look at the second largest party that's in Belgium. It is a Sharia Muslim party that wants to invoke the idea of Sharia law in its entirety in Belgium. So, now enter the tradwives, which remember is just traditional wives. That's literally all it is, but let's try and shorten it and try to make it into a derogatory term for, traditional wives. Wives that stay at home, look after the children, that look after the chores while the man is working and providing for them. Because, supremacy, you'd almost say that that woman is being treated like a queen or a princess. But, derogatory. It's white supremacy. Over the past few years, dozens of YouTube and social media accounts have sprung up showcasing soft-spoken young white women who extol the virtues of staying at home, submitting to male leadership and bearing lots of children, being traditional wives. Nobody said that you should have lots of children, but then again, if you're saying that you should have children in general, I suppose that already goes against your idea that women should be able to choose and everything else like that. Even though women choose to have sex and even though women choose to actually have a child, the whole process of marriage is the man asking the woman. The woman has all the rights in that account. If she doesn't want to, she can say no. If at any point in time that she wants to leave for whatever reason, she can leave and generally take over half of what the man earns and what the man has, and generally will keep the whole idea of custody of children. Depending on how she portrays the man in a divorce court, can nigh on have sole custody of the children, meaning that the man can only see the children when the woman wants him to. But apparently slavery for women and white supremacy controls it. These accounts pepper their message with scrapbook-style collections of 1950s advertising images showing glamorous mothers in lipstick and heels with happy families and beautiful opulent homes. They give their videos titles like Female Nature and Advice for Young Ladies, How I Homeschooled, and You Might Be a Millennial Housewife If. Or pointing out that biology is actually the point of try and have children first and then have a career. The fact is that biology, and the fact is that most or some feminists would actually say, I wish I actually had children because my body clock ran out. Or I wish I didn't have a career because my body clock ran out. If you look at people that are actually having their careers, they actually have money, a lot of money, that have children and careers. And then say to people that are on minimum wage that you should do both. When physically you can't, because you can't afford the nanny that costs around about £400 to £500 a week. Yeah, but this is to do with women freeing themselves, being out of servitude, even though, as I said before, it's the idea that women are in complete control in the idea of marriage. In fact, if you say that marriage would be a patriarchy, I would quote my good friend Ogre on this and say, no, marriage is a matriarchy. It is controlled solely by the woman. In fact, generally, most women will tell the man that what he can and cannot do with his money. And in general, it's a good idea because men are really spontaneous when it comes to spending money. I fancy having a motorbike, so I'm going to spend our 13 grand that we have saved up on a brand new motorbike, or whatever. And generally the woman will go, you're a fucking idiot, stop. And the man will be like, yeah, you're right, I am being a bit of an idiot. Meaning that the woman is the one that's in charge. Though it might not always seem that way, and in fact, good marriages normally let the woman pretend to the man that he's in charge when generally it's the woman that's in charge. And generally that's the best form of marriages. But, I'm probably going to be classed as an incel or a MGTOW after this, so whatever. But running alongside what could be mistaken Tesla style of mummy vlogging, really, is a virulent strain of white nationalism. So I can't even say it. I'm sorry, I can't even say it. One such advocate who calls herself Wife with a Purpose made international headlines last year when she issued something she titled the White Baby Challenge. Sorry, I really do find this bad. So she's citing failing white birth rates in the West. She urged her followers to procreate. I've made 6, she wrote. That will beat me. Well done to her. Well done to her. But that's an idea of fucking white nationalism, is it? That's the idea of white nationalism, isn't it? Generally, falling white birth rates in the West, and whether you want to believe that or not is completely and utterly up to you. But it's simply the point that she's trying to say, I've seen something wrong, why don't you procreate and have more children? You can, and you should. And then just trying to make it a little bit as a competition type thing. I think that's quite interesting. I mean, it's stupid, but it's interesting. Wife with a Purpose might be the most prominent and certainly most openly white supremacy. How is that white supremacy? How is that really white supremacy by trying to make sure that we have more babies? That the white race continues because the white birth rates have decreased? How is that even white supremacy? I see where you're coming from on that point. I suppose I'm a Nazi because of that, though. Of the women who call themselves tradwives or traditional wives, but she is not an anomaly. No, because there's lots of people that actually believe in having children and actually being a wife. Because it's, one, an easier life, and they're actually in control without doing any of the work. Wonder how supremacist that is. Almost sounds like a monarchy of some descriptions, like the actual husband generally puts the wife above themselves and works for them and their family. Interesting that, isn't it? Oh fuck, I'm going to be called an MRA now. These accounts veer dizzyingly from Cosmo-style tips on pleasing your husband to racist musings about ghetto music to, on some occasion, calls to reassert their vision of a white race. The seeming anachronistic way they dress is no accident. Wait, does that mean that you're allowed to judge women on what they wear but nobody else is? So, they deliberately hyperfeminize aesthetics and are constructed precisely to mask their authoritarianism in their ideology. From what you've just described, which I'm guessing is supposed to be the worst of the worst apparently, is the fact that you have some people that are pushing for the ideas of increasing the white race because they decided and look on the statistics to say that the birth rates are falling, maybe we should do something about it, and kind of having a joke or a competitional type mentality with it, and apparently that's authoritarianism. Interesting. The fact that you think that authoritarianism is the idea of going in traditional housewives, and you think that people, remember, that have absolutely no power being a tradwife, are trying to call other people into being tradwives. But yet they have no power, apparently. Do you see the stupidity in this, PhD student Kelly? There is nothing particularly new about this message within the far right, and tradwives still constitute a niche digital subculture. There's a clear market for their message. The biggest tradwife accounts usually surge to about 10,000 YouTube subscribers in just a year of posting, but the male or right counterparts have 10 times the number of followers. Still, tradwives remain worth contemplating because they help illuminate some of the forces that drive the alt-right and where the movement might be going. You mean having more women in them? Having the fact that women are going to be in control of what they're doing 9 times out of 10? Because if they don't, then they're going to lose all of their wealth that they've accumulated. Any children that they have are going to be taken away by them. Yeah, it really does seem that they have an ulterior motive to it, doesn't it? Apparently, the alt-right, it is abhorrent. I'm sure that there are definitely areas of the alt-right in itself that are abhorrent, that are racist, that are hate-filled, that are completely misogynistic. I'm sure that there is. The same as in the alt-left are actually fascists, that actually don't want you to talk, don't actually want you to be able to air a grievance. You have to keep the idea of their ideals and that's it. The idea of communism and socialism being a great idea. But if you disagree with them, apparently you're right on that. You're not a centrist, you're not a liberalist, you're not liberal enough. I don't really understand where this identity politics keeps on going, but the whole idea of identity politics is just hate-filled. It just really is. All it is about my team is better than your team. And this is just evidence of the whole idea of identity politics and the fact that it's stemmed off into the idea of actual academics. The fact that the person who wrote this is a PhD student. The fact that the PhD student is going to have this political view, this political mindset that people that are considering themselves incels don't have any sort of issues and don't actually look into the history of it, and it's actually created by a woman because she was queer. Maybe there's an actual problem with the actual men. Maybe they're in such a toxic masculinity area that they can't actually be gay or transgender. Maybe it's a case of that. But yet, because you keep on pushing them away and not trying to help them, not trying to understand them, and no, I'm not trying to say you should open your legs for them either, but I'm saying because you're not understanding them, you're pushing them into a particular ideological platform. And this is the point of identity politics, because it's driven by an emotional or an emotive response. You can't actually deal with the actual person on a ideological stance. You have to deal with them as the fact of they are Satan, they are alt-right, they are abhorrent, they are horrible. And yes, some people may be, but that's not everybody. As you all like to say yourself, hashtag not all. So carrying on, but it is, like any other mass movement, also driven by a sense of dissatisfaction with modern life. Tradwives help us understand the source of that. So traditional wives completely and utterly understand the source of what's going on by the dissatisfaction by revealing points of overlap between red lipsticked mothers of six and the men who complain of being kissless virgins. What the fuck are you trying to make a false equivalency for? Incels are the ideology of a particular ideology that stems from an aggrievement, a hatred towards what's happening and what has happened to them. The alt-right is a political movement in itself. But, conflate the two issues and try to underline them and underpin them as all of one thing. Just ridiculous. A frustrated yearning for a mythic past of a material abundance at a time when it is becoming increasingly difficult for young people to build careers and achieve financial security is not gender specific. Wow, at least you actually admit to one thing, that it's not gender specific on the wage gap. So well done on that one. I bet you didn't think that that was going to happen. But it's not a yearning for a mythical past, or a mythic past as you put for some fucking reason rather than mythical, when it's becoming increasingly difficult for young people to build careers. Do you know the reasons why it's becoming difficult for young people to build careers? Because they have the idea that feminine dance is going to help them find a job in an office. Yeah, that's not going to happen, is it? So it's very hard for people to find success. And when you go into countries like in Europe and like in the UK in itself, you have particular land masses. You have particular cities that have a particular number of people in them. Now, our grand total of people in our country is, last time I checked, 65 million. Possibly going close to 66 million at this moment in time. But yet, for the last 10 years, we have been having over 225,000 net migration a year, and that's the people that we can keep tabs on. So even if that is completely and utterly true for a 10-year period, that is 2.2 million people that have emigrated to this country, where we were already full at the time. It's like trying to put people on a table that only has 8 seats for them, and you then go, well, here's another 8 people. You're not going to be able to live. You're not going to be able to move. You can't even eat the dinner that's been put in front of you without trying to fight your way into eating it. But, these ideas and these concepts make me completely alt-right, and I'm a Nazi racist because of it. Because I try to point out the actual common sense arguments for it. That if you have a house that only has 4 bedrooms and you invite 20 people into that place is then not livable. Hence why we normally have a complete and utter bedroom limit for people. But we don't have it for a country, apparently, because there's room everywhere. And then you have people complaining why we're building on brown belts and green belts. You wonder why people are complaining about that. Because we're trying to build houses for people that are coming in such a quick point. And the people that are already here that are also breeding, which generally have around about 4 to 6 kids on top of that as well. Which compared to the 1.5 or 1.2 average people in white households that are doing that, yeah, it kind of adds extra people every year. But yet nobody wants to talk about that. And because anybody that does bring that up is virtue signalling or dog whistling to alt-right, right-wing nationalist party, apparently. Even though, no, we just want to have a talk about immigration and the fact that if you have open borders on a small country, a small island like ours, you're going to find the fact that it is full. So now that I've dog whistled to my right-wing subscribers, young people face ever more obstacles, higher demands, and continually dwindling returns in the form of work benefits. Please see rant that I did at the beginning. Job security and pay. Again, see rant I did at the beginning of this paragraph. We shouldn't underestimate how some young white women, when faced with this bleak economic landscape and then presented with a rosy image of 1950s domestic bliss, may look back to the 1960s. Freudian era feminism as having cheated them out of family and a luxurious lifestyle. You mean the luxurious lifestyle of having somebody else completely and utterly attend to almost every whim that you have? Yeah, I would call that a luxurious lifestyle. I wish that would happen to me. But, I'm a man. It's not going to happen that way. Fuck, I'm an MRA. All supported by a single income. The men on the alt-right might point to diversity initiatives and mass immigration as having dismantled their career prospects. The women are furious that they have to consider career prospects at all. See tangent at beginning of this absolute dribble to combat these points. But I'm alright. I'm a Nazi. Let's carry on. So tradwives also point to the ways that the half-finished work of the sexual revolution has brought about not just male, but also feminine discontents. The likes of pickup artists and incels. What the fuck? You can't put people like that fucking together. Pickup artists are completely different. They actually get women. They actually get the idea of actually being able to do it. That's why they try to teach other people how to do it. Incels absolutely feel that they are involuntarily being denied sex and romantic pleasures. Stop forming false equivalencies, you idiots. Claiming that the sexual revolution has brought about consequence-free life of pleasure for young women. Isn't that why you have slut walks? Why socially awkward or unattractive men are left behind? Yeah, I'm not saying that they are, I'm not saying that they do. But if you have a choice of trying to sleep with somebody who's more physically appealing, you're going to sleep with the physically appealing guy, aren't you? It's not hard to work that one out. But the existence of tradwives points to a more nuanced reality. Does it? Or does it just point to the fact that females, probably in general ones that don't follow the idea of feminism, like the idea of getting married, like the idea of forming a family, because fucking biology. Female fears of objectification and sexual violence remain as potent as ever. Actually, that's not true, but let's carry on. The tradwife subculture exploits them by blaming modernity for such phenomenon. No, actually, the tradwives don't seem to do that. They actually just trying to advocate for the idea of traditional wives actually make them happy. Hence the whole argument that you were trying to portray at the beginning, but have gone into a long, biased tangent about tradwives and how they're linked to the alt-right, rather than just women that have a different political point of view to you. But women can't have different views to you, obviously. And if they do, they're racists. And then offers chastity, marriage, and motherhood as an escape. Again, what's wrong with that? Chastity in the fact that you won't get raped. Marriage is in the fact that you know that you're going to be well looked after. The fact that if anything does go wrong in that marriage, that you are so looked after by the state that you're going to get half the stuff that you haven't really worked for. Yes, I understand that you put the effort into the household, but if the man earns 60 grand a year, you don't deserve 30 grand of it. But hey, that's just my opinion on it. Again, I'm an MRA. As one such YouTube commentator, a teenager, told her audience, traditionalism does what feminism is supposed to do, in preventing women from being made into sexual objects and treated like a whore. Well, that teenage woman is absolutely correct. Because if you're married, 9 times out of 10, most, not all, but most, men will leave you alone. Not unless they're actually just fucking arseholes. And then you can't really deal with the arseholes because they're not the fucking norm. You just believe they are. And apparently, it's a lie, of course. Modesty has never been a safeguard against degradation or rape. She's not saying modesty has. She's saying the idea and protection of actually having marriage and actually having somebody that loves and cares for you stops the degradation and stops the rape. And we know that a rapist is no less likely to hurt a woman simply because he's married to her. You're missing the point. It's the fact that the woman gets to choose who's married to her, not the man. The man will ask the woman, but it's the woman's fucking choice. But it's not difficult to see how it could be a seductive lie. It's not a lie, that's why you have to keep on trying to say it's a lie. But the continuous headlines made by the Me Too movement, paradoxically, were eagerly shared among tradwife networks as supposed proof that sexual liberation had made life unacceptably dangerous for women. I'm not sure that they did do that, and I'd like to see your evidence for that personally, but even if they did do that, showing that people that are getting raped for particular points of work, i.e. for people like Harvey Weinstein for instance, or women using their bodies to be able to get particular jobs, per se, maybe is a point of sexually libertizing people, being able to realise that, there's consequences for their action. And maybe that is dangerous for women. So at present, these shared dissatisfactions haven't helped the alt-right recruit a significant number of women. But yet you were saying that these women that are tradwives, as you call them, even if you have 10, you say that on average they each have 10,000 subscribers. That means if you have 10 of them, they have 100,000 subscribers. Does that mean that they're all men that support them? I'm not 100% sure. And the fact is, I don't know. But you seem to have all the answers on that. Quite simply, the men cannot keep their seething misogyny in check. But that's how you have so many of these tradwives that seem to be the problem, that are perpetuating these whole ideas of white supremacy, seem to be about. So you've completely destroyed the whole reason why you've just wrote this article. I would say well done, but I'm not sure you would understand what I mean by that. Women, even those initially sympathetic to the alt-right ideas, face blistering hostility on alt-right message boards and forums when they try to participate. Several long-term alt-right commentators have begun to post lengthy warnings denouncing trad thoughts, women they deem disingenuous in their support, who they say latch onto the movement as a source of fame or money. Really? Now, I notice that you don't go through the idea of thoughts. I notice that you don't go through that. I'm not going to do that. Count Dankula does an excellent video into that and why you should not go anywhere near them. So when it comes to the idea of denouncing trad thoughts, it's not denouncing the idea of the traditional part of it. It's the idea of the thoughts, which use their body to be able to get money off of 12 to 16-year-old boys that, want to see their titties. But, liberation! Lauren Southern, an alt-right YouTube commentator, recently put out a video, Why I'm Not Married, in which she pleaded with her audience to stop calling her a degenerate for not being married with children at age 22. No, she didn't say stop calling her a degenerate. She actually said, I'm doing my own thing and I want to do my career, but I do want to get married. But
Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
It's exceedingly difficult to feel sorry for Miss Southern, whose stunts have included attempting to block direly needed refugee rescue boats off the coast of Italy. Yeah, I'm not even going to say anything on that simply because that's just retarded. She knew the people that were involved. But it's understandable that even women with white nationalist sympathies, because she's a white nationalist, Lauren Southern's a white nationalist. Well done. Identity politics, blinding the actual issues, may not be leaping to sign up for this kind of treatment. Yes, Lauren Southern, the white nationalist that will go through no-go zones areas and prove to people that Islam is not a religion of peace, and then she's a white nationalist for it, just so you can dismiss her actual work. Sounds very interesting to a Tommy Robinson issue, doesn't it? Almost at the end, guys. Almost at the end, boys and girls. We can do this. I really do need some alcohol, but it's way too early for me to start drinking. Like most political networks, primarily based on the internet, the alt-right evolved extremely fast. When I began studying digital anti-feminist and far-right networks for my doctorate in 2015, the number of women in these spaces seems small enough to be insignificant. There has since been such a surfeit of women beginning careers of such networks. Wow, that's actually completely counterproductive to what you said. The fact that they're being called all these names under the sun, the fact that they're not being able to do anything, but yet they're managing to forge a career out of it. Is that because that they actually have people that follow their ideas and actually think that they should be there? Or was this biased propaganda, because there's no other word for it, just the ideas that you have, or is it backed up by any sort of evidence whatsoever? Many infusing their particular brand of far-right ideology with trad rhetoric. I like the idea that she's now not even putting traditional, because it gives the idea of, traditional wives. The idea that men and women are supposed to work together to make a great household and have children between them. In general, that it now seems irresponsibly not to think about them, their roles, and what they reveal. They don't reveal anything apart from the idea that feminism is dying and the actual idea that, being looked after like a princess in most marriages to the point of where you don't have to work, where you don't have to do anything but keep the house clean, do washing up every now and again, and look after a couple of kids, apparently that's enslavement. Even though that you're the one that can do whatever the fuck you want, even though that you're the one that can go out anytime that you want with the kids after taking them to school, even though that you can do anything that you want in between that time. So say, for instance, you have kids between the ages of 5 and 8. You have 2 of them in between that age bracket. You can drop your kid off at 9 o'clock in the morning. You can then know that they're going to be completely and utterly looked after, maintained, and everything to, 3, 3:30, depending if they do an after school club, maybe 4. There's nothing stopping you from working if you want to in that period of time. But guess what? Most housewives don't. I wonder if there's a reason for that. The material conditions that allow far-right movements to thrive seem unlikely to change, and feminism's work is far from done in countering the kind of sexual anxieties that the far-right exploits. What? Do you mean that if you're married then you don't have to worry about being raped at a club? Because, you're normally at home with the person you love rather than actually being out trying to be a slut? Because, slut walks. But, when somebody goes against your choice to be able to do that, they're in the wrong? This is the reason why people call you hypocrites. Tradwives, or as I would like to call them, traditional wives, may seem like a lunatic fringe at present. What, the idea of actually having traditional values? That mean that you're saying that everybody since the age of 1970s, for instance, or 1980s, everybody before that period of time, let me do this properly. Everybody before the idea of the 1990s, every woman that's ever come before you, before that time, was a lunatic fringe. That they believed in the idea of a traditional marriage. No wonder why you put at the end, but they may not stay one for long. Because the idea of traditional marriage is what it's supposed to be. It's the idea of monogamy. The idea of being looked after and loved by the significant other in your life. By forming a family, by forming bonds with that person and those people. But it's an all-right propaganda machine. It's going to destroy everybody. Because you see, it completely and utterly destroys your idea of sexual liberation. You cannot answer it back by saying, yeah, well, we're sexually free. We can do what the fuck we want. Yeah, well, I don't want to. I want to get married. You don't have an argument for that. So you have to completely and utterly try to destroy the idea and say that it's all right and dog whistle. And by the way, where's your proof for any of the ideas that people that actually believe in the idea of traditional wives, your tradwives, as the Urban Dictionary fucks up, why is that bad? You didn't put that in your actual point, did you? You didn't put that in here. You just tried to say that, because all right people seem to do it, then it's bad. You're dog whistling, you have nothing. So with that all being said, I think it's best for me to say au revoir, farewell, adieu, auf Wiedersehen, I'll see you all again. But first of all, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe to this video, and don't forget to check out my new videos. See you all again real soon. Bye bye for now.